Official science hides a disturbing truth. You live in a perceptual prison. The five senses you trust so much capture less than 1% of the reality around you. The rest remains invisible, operating at frequencies that your physical body was never programmed to detect. While you believe you're seeing everything, you're navigating blindly through a multidimensional universe that pulsates just beyond the reach of your ordinary perception. Itzhak Bentov, one of the greatest consciousness scholars of the 20th century, dedicated his life to unveiling this secret. What he discovered goes against everything you've been taught about the nature of reality. Time is not a straight line. Past, present, and future coexist simultaneously in an interconnected web where your decisions today reverberate backward and forward through dimensions you don't even imagine exist. The fourth dimension is not science fiction. It's an operational layer of reality where your thoughts become real creative forces, where authentic desires function as portals to possibilities impossible in three-dimensional perception. But accessing this dimension requires more than curiosity. It requires you to abandon the comfortable certainties of the ego and open yourself to a truth that can completely transform your experience of existing. In the next few minutes, you're going to learn practical techniques to expand your consciousness beyond sensory limit. Prepare yourself, because what comes next may destroy your most fundamental beliefs about who you are and what is possible. Bentov used to say something that disconcerted even the most experienced physicists. The universe doesn't fully reveal itself to the eyes. The five senses capture only a minuscule fraction of what truly exists around us. Vision perceives an extremely narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum. Hearing captures limited vibrations, and touch responds only to what is dense enough to press against the skin. The rest remains hidden, pulsating at frequencies that the physical body simply cannot decode. The fourth dimension doesn't refer to a distant place or something fantastical reserved for mystics isolated in cave. It's a layer of reality that has always been present, operating silently while human attention remains fixed on the three-dimensional world. Bentov explained this through a simple analogy. A two-dimensional being, living on a flat plane, would never comprehend the concept of height. For this being, a cube crossing through its world would seem to appear out of nowhere, mysteriously change shape, and disappear. Three-dimensional logic is invisible to those living in two dimensions. Similarly, four-dimensional logic remains invisible to those imprisoned in ordinary three-dimensional perception. Time, in this expanded perspective, doesn't flow like a river in a straight line. Bentov proposed that past, present, and future coexist simultaneously, forming a complex web where all moments are interwoven. The linear perception of time is a limitation of physical senses, a biological necessity to navigate the material world. But consciousness, that non-physical dimension of being, doesn't obey the same rules. It can expand beyond temporal limits and perceive patterns that transcend the chronological sequence of events. Every thought, every decision made, every emotion experienced sends waves through this multidimensional web. Bentov saw the human being as a simultaneous transmitter and receiver, constantly sending signals to this invisible matrix and receiving echoes in return. The central question is not whether these higher dimensions exist, but rather whether individual consciousness is tuned to perceive them. Most people live with their internal receivers turned off, capturing only the superficial noise of three-dimensional existence while the deeper signals go unnoticed. Thinking in four dimensions requires a radical shift in how causality is interpreted. In the three-dimensional view, events follow a linear cause and effect logic. A causes B, which causes C. But in the fourth dimension, A, B, and C coexist in a unified field where influence is multidirectional. The future can inform the present as much as the past. Choices made today reverberate not only forward but also backward, altering the meaning of experiences already lived. Bentov insisted that this is not an abstract theory but an operational reality that can be accessed through proper training of consciousness. Expansion into the fourth dimension begins with the recognition that ordinary perception is limited, calibrated for a specific range of experience. Adjusting the internal tuning allows access to layers of information that have always been broadcasting, awaiting only a receiver capable of decoding them properly. The discovery was fascinating when studying altered states of consciousness. Human desires function as directional antennas. Not every desire, however, possesses the same capacity to tune into higher frequencies. Superficial desires, born from social comparison or fear of scarcity, operate at dense frequencies that keep consciousness trapped on the three-dimensional plane. Authentic desires, those that spring from the deepest essence of being, vibrate at completely different frequencies. These authentic desires carry a unique energetic signature. They don't arise from the need to prove something to others or to fill emotional void. They're born from an internal alignment, from a resonance with something greater than the individual self. In deep meditative states, people report experiences where their true desires manifest with a clarity impossible to achieve in the ordinary waking state. In these moments, the separation between the desirer and the desired begins to dissolve. The creative force of these authentic desires lies in their capacity to transcend conventional barriers of time and space. In the fourth dimension, desire aligned with genuine growth and goodness acts as a portal. It's not about superficial positive thinking or repeating empty affirmations in front of the mirror. It's about a state of being where intention and internal vibration merge, creating a magnetic field that attracts corresponding experiences. Meditation emerges in this context as the fundamental tool to access this state. Years of research demonstrated that deep meditation is not simple relaxation or a mental pause. It's an active process of tuning, where consciousness learns to navigate territories unmapped by ordinary perception. In these states, the boundaries between past and future begin to dissolve, revealing a reality where all times coexist simultaneously. At the deepest levels of meditation, something extraordinary happens. The person ceases to be merely an isolated observer and begins to perceive the interconnection between their thoughts, emotions, and the results that appear in their life. This represents an awakening to creative responsibility. Each thought is no longer just a private mental activity but a seed cast into the four-dimensional field, destined to germinate into concrete experiences. Meditation offers the opportunity to observe this process in real time, to witness how the energy of consciousness shapes the matter of experience. The ego represents one of the greatest obstacles to the expansion of consciousness. It operates exclusively within three dimensions, building its identity from possessions, social roles, achievements, and comparisons. The ego needs rigid boundaries to exist, clear frontiers between me and other, between mine and yours. This need for separation is fundamental for physical survival but becomes a prison for consciousness seeking to expand beyond the material. The ego's structure functions as a filter that selects only information confirming its pre-existing narrative. Experiences that threaten its identity are discarded or distorted. Possibilities that don't fit its worldview are ignored. In this way, the ego keeps consciousness trapped in a closed loop, always circling through the same patterns of thought and behavior. Life becomes a predictable repetition, where the same problems appear in different guises but essentially identical. Awakening to the ego means observing it without judgment, recognizing its mechanisms without being dominated by them. It's not about destroying the ego or denying its legitimate function in navigating the physical world. It's about developing a point of observation beyond it, a perspective that can witness its movements without identifying completely with them. This conscious observation creates an internal space where genuine choices become possible. When observing life from a broader perspective, the ego's desires begin to dissolve naturally. The need to accumulate, to compete, to prove value through external validation loses its urgency. In place of these compulsions arise deeper motivations, aligned with a purpose that transcends individual benefit. Consciousness begins to perceive itself as part of a larger web, where personal well-being is intrinsically connected to collective well-being. Higher levels of consciousness reveal themselves through this gradual dissolution of the ego's barriers. In these states, the perception of separation diminishes and the fundamental interconnection of all things becomes evident. What once seemed to be a fragmented universe, full of isolated entities competing for limited resources, reveals itself as a unified field of consciousness experiencing itself through infinite forms. Compassion ceases to be an abstract moral concept and becomes a direct perception of the underlying unity. Universal purpose is not something that needs to be discovered through external searches, but something that emerges naturally from this expanded perception. Conscious visualization goes far beyond simply forming mental images. Most people understand visualization as a superficial exercise, where you close your eyes and try to see something on the mind's screen. This type of practice rarely produces results because it remains confined to the mental level, without involving the totality of being. True conscious visualization is a multisensory experience that mobilizes all layers of perception. Feeling is more important than seeing. The temperature of the visualized environment, the texture of surfaces, the sensation of the breeze touching the skin, the weight of the body in different positions. All these sensory elements create an experiential density that transcends mere imagination. Sounds also play a fundamental role. The rhythm of breathing, ambient noises, voices, background music. Each sonic detail adds layers of reality to the internal experience. Aromas and flavors, although frequently neglected, possess an extraordinary power of emotional anchoring. The olfactory system is directly connected to brain regions responsible for memory and emotion. Incorporating these sensory dimensions into visualization creates neurological bridges that facilitate the materialization of the desired experience. The body doesn't completely distinguish between physical experience and deeply imagined experience. The same neural circuits activate, the same chemical substances are released. This deep visualization creates a specific energetic resonance. Consciousness, operating in this expanded state, is not merely dreaming or fantasizing. It's tuning into a particular frequency in the four-dimensional field, where the desired reality already exists in potential form. The resonance functions as a magnet, attracting circumstances, people, and opportunities that correspond to the emitted frequency. It's not about magic or magical thinking, but an operational principle that can be verified through direct experience. Consistent practice of this conscious visualization gradually reconfigures the internal structure of perception. The brain begins to recognize as familiar what was once only imagined. This familiarity dissolves unconscious resistances and opens neural pathways that facilitate actions aligned with the vision. The person begins to notice details in the external environment that were previously invisible, synchronicities that connect internal and external reality in surprising ways. Integrating four-dimensional consciousness into daily life means acting while knowing that each thought, each emotion, each visualization is an act of creation within this broader dimension. Living with four-dimensional consciousness radically transforms everyday experience. Challenges that once seemed insurmountable obstacles reveal themselves as opportunities for growth and expansion. The change is not in external circumstances but in how consciousness relates to them. A problem at work ceases to be just a problem and comes to be seen as an invitation to develop new skills or to recognize limiting patterns that need to be dissolved. Decisions become more fluid and aligned with the deepest desires. The chronic doubt that paralyzes so many people begins to dissipate, replaced by an internal clarity that doesn't depend on external guarantees. This clarity doesn't come from exhaustive rational analyses, but from a direct perception that transcends common mental processing. It's as if consciousness had access to information that linear reasoning cannot process. Intuition reveals itself as a completely different dimension from ordinary cognition. It's not about random hunches or emotional superstitions. Intuition represents direct communication with higher layers of consciousness, with dimensions that operate outside temporal limitations. Information that transcends time and space arrives through subtle impressions, bodily sensations, sudden insights that arise without mental effort. Learning to listen to this intuitive voice without judgment requires practice and trust. The ego usually disqualifies these perceptions because they don't fit its three-dimensional logic. The rational mind seeks linear causal explanations, while intuition operates through quantum leaps of understanding. Developing this listening means creating an internal space of silence where subtle signals can be perceived without the interference of constant mental noise. The multidimensional wisdom that emerges from this listening guides toward more conscious and aligned decisions. Choices that would seem risky or irrational to the logical mind reveal themselves perfectly adequate in retrospect. Opportunities arise at the exact moment, connections form in ways that defy statistical probability. Life begins to flow with a synchronicity that suggests the operation of higher intelligences working behind the scenes of visible reality. This trust in intuitive wisdom transforms the relationship with uncertainty, allowing navigation through the unknown with a serenity that previously seemed impossible. Manifestation in the fourth dimension operates at different rhythms from the immediacies of contemporary society. Modern culture conditions the expectation of instant results, where everything must happen at the speed of a click. This mentality creates a profound anxiety that sabotages the more delicate processes of conscious creation. Results don't always appear on the timeline the ego establishes, and this discrepancy generates frustration and doubt. The patience necessary for four-dimensional manifestation is not a passive resignation or empty waiting. It's about an active trust in the invisible processes of the universe, an internal certainty that remains firm even in the face of absent external evidence. It's like planting a seed in the earth. The gardener doesn't keep digging up the seed every day to check if it's germinating. He trusts the process, waters consistently, provides adequate conditions, and allows nature to follow its course. Each thought seeded in the field of consciousness has its own germination time. Some sprout quickly, manifesting in days or weeks. Others take months or even years to mature completely. The speed of manifestation depends on multiple factors: the clarity of intention, the depth of emotional alignment, the absence of contradictory internal resistances, and synchrony with larger cycles operating beyond individual perception. Personal vibration needs to align with the authenticity of desire. Desires contaminated by fear, lack, or need for approval carry dense vibrations that create resistance in the field of manifestation. Desires that are born from a place of fullness, from a genuine intention of growth and contribution, vibrate at frequencies that facilitate their materialization. This authenticity cannot be fabricated or faked. It emerges naturally from deep work of self-knowledge and dissolution of ego patterns. Synchrony with the invisible processes of the universe requires a refined sensitivity. Signs appear constantly, indicating when to act and when to wait, when to persist and when to let go. These indications rarely arrive through obvious messages. They manifest as bodily sensations, as meaningful coincidences, as doors that close or open in unexpected ways. Developing the capacity to read these signs transforms the journey of manifestation into a dynamic dialogue with the greater intelligence that permeates all existence. Now you carry knowledge that few possess. The fourth dimension is no longer an abstract concept but a real possibility within your reach. The question that remains is, what are you going to do with this information? Will you let it die as just another video watched and forgotten, or will you apply these practices and radically transform your reality? Close your eyes right now and feel. Are your deepest desires aligned with your essence or with fear? Do your daily decisions reflect the consciousness of a multidimensional creator or someone trapped in the three-dimensional prison? Are you ready to dissolve the barriers of the ego and access levels of consciousness that most people don't even know exist? Change begins the instant you decide you deserve more than the limited reality you've accepted until now. Each meditation, each conscious visualization, each moment of intuitive listening is a step out of the perceptual prison. If this content expanded your consciousness, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. We have much more to explore together about the mysteries of consciousness and multidimensional manifestation. Your journey to the fourth dimension is only beginning.